Hello, good morning. This is Ibukwan Folami, and today we'll be looking at energy metabolism and energy production in animal cells. Okay, so this is NUT 202, and it's the second part of the NUT 201, and we have a set of objectives which have been covered by my colleagues, and in this lecture I will be taking you on energy production and metabolism in the animal cell. This is the Department of Human Nutrition, so we are concerned about what happens in humans basically, and hence the consideration of the animal cell as the focus. Okay, so the objectives of this lecture is first of all to remind you of the cell. So we'll be looking at a basic revision of the cell. You've done this in different courses, beginning with your 100 level courses, Zoo 114, and for those of you in physiology, in biochemistry, in human nutrition. I'm not sure about those in food technology. So I'll be trying as much as possible to make this a revision course. If I lose you at any point, kindly feel free to make up for it, because you are not all the same. So definitely, if you notice that you have a gap in knowledge, it would be nice that you fill that gap on YouTube or perhaps on a website, so that every other thing can make sense. For students that are in environmental health, I'm not also sure if you take Zoo 114, but the same also applies to you. So I imagine I'm carrying everybody along. So we'll be looking at the cell, and the cell is the basic or the smallest unit of life, and we'll be looking at the revision of this, because energy metabolism essentially takes place at the cellular level. So we will need to really appreciate what goes on at the cellular level. So we'll be looking at the characteristics of life, more like a revision of what we did in junior secondary school. Yes, as far back as JS2. Mr. Niger D, if you remember. We'll be looking at ATP as a source of energy in animal cells. Some people call it the energy currency in the animal cell. And of course, an essential part of energy production is what we call redox reactions. And we'll be looking at this in detail, how all the redox reactions that we considered in SS1 chemistry, do you remember? Yes, so we'll be looking at how they really play an essential role in energy production and energy metabolism in the animal cell. And we know that mitochondria is where energy is produced. That is very basic knowledge, and we've learned that from earlier courses. And we'll be looking at how everything basically adds up together, and how all this happens in the complex structure of the mitochondria in the process of the electron transport chain ultimately. And finally, how ATP is generated during carbohydrate metabolism. And this is quite interesting, because how everything adds up together is quite interesting. And just as a teaser, we'll be looking at the work of the ATP synthase. ATP synthase is that is basically the membrane enzyme that actually produces ATP in the inner membrane of the mitochondrion. But we'll be looking at this in details. And finally, we'll be looking at, not in this class, perhaps in the next class, regulation of energy metabolism at different physiological states. When we are fasting, that is when we don't have enough supply of carbohydrates, and when we are feasting, that is when we have carbohydrates in excess. So we'll be looking at the physiological processes that happen during these states. So we begin the class, and welcome to NUT 202. If we look at how life is organized, we'll see that it's quite interesting in the sense that you bring together chemistry and biology, sort of. So, for instance, even in the living organism at the cellular level, you see some form of atomic chemical reactions, which we call biochemical reactions. But these chemical reactions are happening. They are happening at the cellular level, perhaps at the organism level. But if we look at all the reactions that occur in the animal cell, we see certain things happening at the atomic level. So think about energy production. Largely, most of the reactions of metabolism that occur in the animal cell that leads to the generation of energy, many of them occur at the atomic level. And of course, if we move a bit higher than that, we see some forms of metabolism reactions, biochemical reactions, occurring at the molecular level. So think about your DNA, for example, and how your DNA replicates and how your DNA produces enzymes that are used in the digestion, like you did in NUT 201. Most of this happen at the molecular level. At a higher level, we have the organelle level. So an organelle is found in a cell. So a mitochondria, or mitochondria in this case, is a very important organelle that we'll be referring to, because largely energy production occur at this level. Okay, if we move higher than that, we see that in the animal cell, or in the animal organism, we have cells. And interestingly, all these cells, they have different types. So we have blood cells. So for example, we have RBCs, we have nerve cells. So you can see that this is an RBC, this is a nerve cell, a dendrite as it is called. This is a white blood cell, and you can see, and of course, this is a spermatozoa. It's a sperm cell. So the nature of the cell differ. So, and it's depending on the kind of work that the cells do, the nature differs. So if you look at an RBC is meant to carry oxygen, right? So it doesn't have a nucleus in that sense. Eventually, a fully mature RBC is devoid of a nucleus. But that's not the same for the white blood cell, and it's not the same, for the nerve cell. And the point is that depending on the actual function of the cell, the form of the cell differ to help it carry out its function. At the next level, we see the tissue, where you have many similar cells coming together, to carry out a particular function. So an example is what happens in the liver. So liver cells are called sinusoids, and they come together to work together to function in the organ called liver. And all the cells, but they carry out particular function, like the work of detoxification of toxins in your food and from other sources before these compounds before they are sent into the bloodstream and into all the other cells. Okay, And of course, when you have multiple organs working together, we have a system. And we did this partly in NET 201 when we looked at digestion, and we looked at how the different organs of digestion work together. For example, the stomach, the spleen, the liver, the small intestine. We saw this largely in NET 201. And when we have different systems coming together, we see a full-fledged man here, a complete organism. So it's good to see that the human nature is very interesting, very complex, and the more we understand it, the more we see how interesting we are as humans. So the next point here in this slide is that the characteristics of life at the cellular level, which we learned, I think, as far back as junior secondary school, what we call Mr. 90D. It's good to appreciate that all the characteristics of life happen both at the cellular level and as a full organism level. So think about you. You can move, you can respire, you can feed, you can respond to stimuli, you can grow, you're growing, and your growth will continue. You can pass waste products, you can reproduce, and of course, you can die. The same way, if you think about a cell, a lymphocyte cell, a sinusoid cell in the liver, a sperm cell, think about any kind of cell, a nerve cell, the same way that cell can have all the characteristics of life. So what happens to you at the cellular level also happened to you at the full organism level. And to think that we have trillions of cells in our bodies is actually one of the amazing wonders that never stops impressing me as a scientist. Okay, the next thing now, we're beginning to enter into the heart of the course. And basically, what is this course about? It's about energy production. So how do we make energy in our bodies? So it's the nitty-gritty that we will just be going into the details, and that's what we'll be going into in this course. So we are complex, and our complexity, part of it is what we're trying to appreciate in this course. And you see, we're making a lot of energy. We need a lot of energy. We use energy for different activities. Even when we are sleeping, we're using energy. We call that energy basal energy. So it's sometimes called basal metabolism. But it's the energy that we use even when we are resting. Look at this kid here. He looks very mischievous. Okay, so we're constantly using energy. When we're studying, when we're doing active physical activity, we're really using energy. And for me, I'm not a very good dancer, but I attempt, and I enjoy moving and shaking my body, as they say, shake body. But I realized that really dancing too consumes a lot of energy. Okay, so in whatever state that we are constantly using energy, and I think this is the point that I'm trying to make in this slide. So if we go to the cellular level, and that's something I would like you to appreciate in this course, because I've treated the organization of life, so many times I would like you to follow me to see, depending on what I'm talking about, it will be nice to have this mental exercise where you ask yourself, at what level are we? Are we at the organization? Are we at the cellular level? Are we at the molecular level? Are we at the organism level? It makes you appreciate the details, because many times we'll be speaking at different levels. So We need energy for many biological processes, but you can see many of these processes are happening at the cellular level. So think about it. Earlier on we said we can breathe, we can drink, we can reproduce and die, and the same way our cells can do that. But at the cellular level, think about this. This is an axon, and this is found in a nerve cell, and this is the process where your muscles contract, and your muscles are constantly contracting when you're walking, when you're grabbing something, when you're playing tennis, when you're playing football. Your muscles are contracting. And if we think at the cellular molecular level, 1,001 chemical processes, millions of chemical processes are happening here, which are way beyond this course, but many of them utilizing energy. It is good to appreciate this. The same thing when cells are dying, during what we call programmed cell death or apoptosis. When cells are replicating, energy is being consumed. So when you think of energy consumption, yes, you're thinking of you. I'm tired. Oh, I've used a lot of energy. But it's also good to look at it at the cellular level to see how these things are happening. Okay, so even organelles need energy to function at the cellular level. Now, at this point, I'm going to show you a video of it's basically a recording of a light microscope, and it's quite interesting because it showed the white blood cell chasing a bacterium, and it was like a war. So the white blood cell detected the bacterium, and the way the white blood cell is structured, it's structured to consume the bacterium, and it happens like the way an amoeba consumes its food or something. And it's quite interesting, and of course secretes some metabolic enzymes to digest the bacterium, and it's quite interesting. Okay, so where is energy produced in the animal cell? We already treated that, and it's in the mitochondrion. It's good that we appreciate the mitochondrion, and we'll be looking at it in the next slides. But these are the parts of the mitochondrion. So energy is produced in the form of ATP, which we call adenosine triphosphate, and ATP can be seen as the energy currency of the cell. So think about the way we have a currency in this part of the world. Every country has her currency, the naira, the dollar, the euro, depending on the country you find yourself. In the biological organism, ATP is the currency of the cell. So the body produces energy in the form of ATP, and this is actually produced in the mitochondrion. And this is done through series of redox reactions, and redox reactions are basically reduction and oxidation reactions, and it's good to understand how this happens, but we'll be going into it later on. But in summary, this happens in this equation where a molecule of glucose is oxidized into carbon dioxide and water, and in the process generating between 36 to 38 molecules of ATP. So in some textbooks you'll see this as 36 ATP. Yeah, it's still okay, but In some other textbooks, you see it as 38 ATP. So it's good to memorize this reaction, but largely this is the equation that leads to the production of energy from glucose. Importantly, we see that this is an oxidation reaction, and oxygen is being added to glucose to produce carbon dioxide, which we breathe out, and water. And if you want to see this, there's an interesting video on it's more like an animation of how energy is produced. I really recommend that you watch it on YouTube. It will make you really appreciate and put the lecture in a better perspective.